Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. I am Rob, and with me, Carter, as always. How you doing, Carter?
Good, man. About to venture down a windy road.
Yeah, put your sombrero on.
I guess so.
We got two guests with us today. They're going to take us on a journey through Jalisco. We've got Luis, who's been on the show, and Leo, who's been on the show, back on the show for another episode today. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Good to be back. Thank you for having us.
We appreciate you guys coming out and kind of sharing and educating, because I know absolutely zero about tequila other than it goes in a margarita, and people take a lot of shots with it and sometimes finish the bottle with that little worm at the bottom.
You know, both are very good uses for tequila, but
It
it's
is.
also a magical spirit on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I thought it would be great to do an episode and kind of educate me and for listeners out there who see this title and go, hey, I don't know a lot about it, an opportunity to kind of dive into it a little bit and understand what it is, how it's made, the differences, because there's three different types that they make, right? Well, when I say types, I'm talking about when I say color.
Yeah, there's a couple different categories. It starts off with the Blanco, which is unaged. I think it can have up to 3 months of age and still be called a Blanco. Transition over to a Reposado, which can be aged up to a year. A year to 3 years is añejo, and I think anything after 3 years they're called an extra añejo. But they also have mixto, which is kind of like it can be mixed in with like neutral grain spirits, so you kind of want to steer clear of those. And that's why it's very important to look at the label. The word gold doesn't mean anything. So if a tequila says it's, there's gold, there probably has coloring in it. Where if it says reposado, you know that it's 100% Blue Weber agave and it's spent up to a year in some barrels.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because I have seen 100% agave, that kind of thing. So I figured that had some meaning behind it.
Yeah, so, you want your tequila to be made out of just tequila, and that's going to be Blue Weber agave. But, people take shortcuts in every facet of life to kind of make money.
Let's start there, because there are some rules to tequila, how it can be, where it needs to come from to be called tequila. What's used to make it tequila. Just kind of go over maybe the history and kind of, the process and what can be used to make the product that is tequila.
So surprisingly, tequila's been around for a really long time, but it wasn't until I think 1972 or early in the 70s that the Mexican government kind of put their foot down and finally developed a denomination of origin from tequila, or for tequila rather. Before then, it could have been made anywhere because there was no government regulation. But in 1972 or early 70s, that might be close to then, they decided that they were going to, protect tequila from just being made in Mexico. It can come from one of 5 states. It's Jalisco, Tamaulipas, Nayarit, I think Michoacan, and I'm kind of blanking on the other one. But most of the tequila produced is being made in Jalisco. And it can be made anywhere in Jalisco, where in the other states, it kind of has to come from certain places. It also has to be bottled and distilled here in the United States. So you can't take the juice anywhere else, distill it there, or even bottle it there and have it still be called tequila. But tequila came around because of the Spanish. So before tequila, the Aztecs drank what's called pulque. So pulque is a fermented version of the plant. And it's kind of like an agave beer or an agave wine, as it were.
Can you still get that?
Oh yeah, people drink pulque all over Mexico. It's very good for you. It's kind of like kombucha.
Okay.
Where it's
Cool.
It's a naturally fermented drink. It's good for digestion, but the Aztecs treated it as a medicinal plant, as a way to eat. The piña inside the agave is very, very sweet, so it can be very nourishing. It has a lot of calories. Fermented, it had religious and healing properties for them. It also gives you a nice little buzz, and it's got all those good, healthy bacteria to kind of help your gut out.
Oh, nice.
So then when the Spanish came, they brought a bunch of whiskey and a bunch of brandy, and then it ran out. So they had to figure out a way to make booze, and the available fermented beverage of choice that was already here was agave.
Yeah, it kind of makes you think about like the rye and the corn for the other whiskeys that we know.
Yeah, how bourbon came about.
Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Used to making malted barley type stuff, and that didn't grow well here. So
that makes sense. It's funny how cultures find a way.
Right, and well, I mean, they had plenty of corn, but the corn in Mexico is really different than the corn we're used to here in the United States. The corn here in the United States has ridiculous high sugar content.
Yeah.
So it tends well to making fermented beverages because you can turn that sugar into alcohol. We have over, I think, 250 different species of corn, and there's definitely some sweet ones, but it wasn't primarily what corn was used for. So since they already had this fermented beverage that was already being made into alcohol, it was a really easy process for them to kind of distill that, bring their stills over and distill it into what we know as tequila. At first they called it vino de mezcal because they used to call the agave plant mezcal. And pretty soon after, they kind of just lost to wine. Vino means wine of mezcal from tequila.
Yeah.
That got very, very wordy. And as they started trying to sell it, they just like, let's get rid of everything and let's just keep the word tequila because it was primarily being made in the city of Tequila in Jalisco.
Oh.
I didn't even know
I didn't even know there was a city.
I didn't either. See, I knew we were going to learn things on today's episode.
That's how ignorant I am. I didn't even know that was a city in Mexico.
The city of bourbon.
Yeah, the city of bourbon. Yeah.
Which is a dry county, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or dry city, dry county. Well, tell us real quick, both of you, have you always, you're Hispanic, Mexican, so have you always been into tequila, or is this something that you formed your love for this later on in life when you could actually drink legally?
I mean, in Mexico,
and then Leo, you tell us
the
as well,
legal age is kind of a suggestion more than a hard law.
My wife would tell you from El Paso, before you were 21, going across the border was a normal thing.
Well, and in Mexico, still the legal age limit is 18, actually.
Yeah, if they question you at all.
Question you at all, yeah. So it's not really too much of a big deal. But I was talking to, I think, Leo before we started recording. And in Mexico, people, their approach to tequila and spirits isn't necessarily how we are used to it. And I guess it's very similar in the United States, but people aren't trying to try all the different tequilas and find out which one's the best one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brand loyalty due to what you grew up with.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I started drinking, my grandfather liked Don Julio for a really long time. So my mom drank Don Julio. So we drank Don Julio. And, now going back, so my love of tequila started very, very young, but it was almost always Don Julio. And we didn't really venture out of it because we knew that it was a good one and didn't need to try anything else. Mm-hmm. And as my love of other spirits has grown, as I started studying other spirits, I came back to tequila and realized how ignorant I had been of it. Like I thought I knew tequila really well, but I hadn't really ventured out and explored too much of it. So it's been fun, maybe the last 5 years or so, going back to the spirit and really approaching it from all angles, not just tequila, but mezcal and soton as well.
It's probably kind of like, how, I don't know, I was probably on the end of this, but you were probably during the time when bourbon was your grandfather's drink and he drank Jim Beam.
Sure.
And that's just kind of what he drank.
The one bottle, buy it, refill it every week, and that's all you drink.
It's obviously been in the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years where everybody's like, hey, well, I want to try all this kind of stuff, so maybe there's a revolution coming there.
And I think socially we've all changed to, wanting to know what it is and how, not just spirits is what I'm saying. Whether it's food and you get one dish and go, okay, but what else can you get from this style of food, and you want to explore that whole world. So I think, spirits applies, but everywhere I think that's kind of food and whiskey and women, but Leo, what?
Yeah.
Your love of tequila, did this come from your buddy over here? Or did he get you into it? Were you into it a little bit before you? And that was kind of a connection that you guys had.
So I would say, when you were asking Luis earlier, I started thinking about when I first recall drinking tequila, and college drank tequila a little bit. My fraternity, it was one our family drink.
Yeah.
So which is passed down with who your big brother is.
Because you're from the South.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think a lot of people.
Dirty South.
Dirty South.
Lower Alabama.
Lower Alabama, baby.
Because when I think of tequila as a drink by state, kind of, it's from Texas, kind of going around to, New Mexico and Arizona and California. Going the other way where you're from, I wouldn't have thought that tequila would have been a beverage of choice. I'm very kind of blown away by that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say beverage of choice either.
Was it more for effect, or did you actually appreciate tequila?
So I think I just appreciated spirits in general.
Okay.
And when I was in college, drinking a little bit of tequila, and then in addition to that, one of the things that I really like to do is some of my family's from Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York, and we have a family reunion every year in Rhode Island, and it's something that my cousin really enjoyed was drinking tequila during that family reunion, and so like that was an event that I would really look forward to as well, and so I would always like try and bring something new that maybe he hadn't have tried.
Yeah.
And then, moving to Houston within the last couple of years of meeting Luis, definitely, went down the rabbit hole with agave spirits in general, and really tried to hone in on my appreciation for the spirit from the traditional methods, and how that kind of relates to bourbon is the interesting thing to me, which I'm sure we'll get into more as we have this discussion.
Yeah, I do want to bring up real quick. Sorry, Matt, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I do want to talk about, as we've had guests on and talked about rums or maybe, even bourbons, the spirit and wine world does a really good job of marketing, right? And there's a high volume of products sold on certain brands that really aren't good brands. And I think it's our responsibility to mention those today.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what I was going to...
There are a lot of crappy tequilas out there that people might think are good because they just see so much marketing for it, and it's really not good tequila.
I think I was actually going to go the other direction.
What were you going to
do? Are any of the big brands that... do they have any good stuff?
I was going to mention before you go, Luis, that this podcast is sponsored by 818.
One resource that everybody needs to know that's getting into tequila is called Tequila Matchmaker.
Okay.
So because of the denomination of origin, the CRT was created, and the CRT is a governing body of tequila. Most distilleries even have a CRT office in their distillery that every day that person's going in there and making sure tequila is being made the right way, or at least the way by law to the T it's supposed to be made. They are also each assigned a NOM, an NOM, and that number designates, you can trace any product back to the original distillery from which it was made, which is important because I think there's over, I don't know, maybe 1,500 or 2,000 different brands of tequila.
Wow.
But there's only like 90 or something distilleries,
That makes sense.
So there's an enormous amount of product and brands being put out by a very small amount. And the big players, some of them are, making 30, 35, 40 different brands of tequila.
So there's an MGP of tequila.
Yeah, there's several. There's
Lots
several.
of them, yeah.
Okay.
But the greatest part about this is that you don't have to read the back and see, is it made in Indiana? Where could it be from? You just go to Tequila Matchmaker, look up the NOM, search that number, and it tells you what distillery, and not only that, the process of how it's made.
Okay. Sounds like that's important. We're going to talk about that.
Yes, the process is really important. Most of the guys cutting corners will tell you that it doesn't matter how you make it.
Because they're cutting corners.
Right.
Yeah.
So
they're making more money.
Yeah.
So it starts off with obviously how you harvest the tequila or the Blue Weber agave and when you harvest it. Most of them are harvesting by hand. They use these like shovel looking things that are very, very sharp. So they take off all the pencas, which are the leaves of it, and they harvest the piña.
Okay.
The piña is the inner part. It makes it a lot easier to transport just the piña, and the pencas also give it the bitterness if you use it to distill. And then from there, you have to cook the agave. There's a couple different ways to do it.
You can also talk about like before they even harvest it. One of the things I was talking about, like bourbon ages in a barrel. But one of the things that I found really interesting about agave is that, this plant will mature for 10, sometimes 20 years in the ground before it's harvested for the people that are doing it the right way. So,
well, for mezcal, so one of the reasons that Blue Weber agave is used to make tequila is because it's the agave that matures the quickest. Mm-hmm. So, like you were mentioning, there are my favorite species of agave for mezcal is Karwinski, and Karwinskis generally take minimum about 12, 15 years to mature. Some of them even 20, 25 years. whereas the Blue Weber starts maturing around 5 years, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. So it makes it a lot easier to make it. So yeah, some brands won't wait till it's like super mature and super sweet and ready to go. They'll kind of harvest it a little bit early. Then you have to cook it down. You can either, if you're making mezcal, most of them are digging up huge pits and then putting a little bit of wood and coals at the bottom and then throwing the piñas on top and then lighting it. So it cooks kind of all in its own juices, but with wood, and that's where you get the smoky element to mezcal. Most tequila is made either in brick ovens, but they use steam, or in an autoclave, which is kind of like a pressure cooker, a stainless steel pressure cooker, where they put everything in there and they cook it down. In a traditional brick oven, it could take up to 72 hours to bake all the piñas all the way through. In an autoclave, they can get away with it in 12. And then,
the pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Which is also going to affect the quality of the tequila as well.
You know, the people using autoclave will tell you it doesn't. But
That's what they always say.
Of course they will.
Yeah.
And then the worst way, which most people don't use, but the high production places do, is they'll chop up the piñas into little tiny pieces, and then cook them with really, really high pressure, high intense water and steam, and just kind of strip all the sugars and starches away from it. So that's the least use method, because it's the most aggressive. Definitely makes the worst product. I think even the people that use autoclave will tell you that method sucks.
Yeah.
So it's mainly between the brick method, that some people only do 36 hours, some 48, some up to 72. And then once they cook it down, it's about separating the juices from the plant.
Go ahead. You got a question? I got a question.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the agave plant, do the producers own the farms, or are they sourcing their piñas from? Okay.
Yeah, it varies by brand.
It's kind of like wine. Some people have their own vineyards. Some get it from a farmer.
And right now we're looking at 2 bottles of Tequila Ocho. Tequila Ocho is made by a very famous family that's been in the game for a really long time. There's Felipe Camarenas, one of his products, and they are producing single estate tequila. So they own the haciendas, and they are using only agaves from a certain estate, from a certain hacienda, to create that tequila. But the majority of the brands, especially the big brands, it's hard to own enough land and own enough agave to be able to make it all from their own agave. So there's a lot of sourcing of agave going on.
So when we talk about quality, and you talk about the autoclave versus the brick oven, it's 3 days versus 12 hours. Why I'm going to call it a cheat. Why the shortcut there? If you told me 3 years versus a year, I kind of go, okay, I kind of get it. Cash flow, you got to get some product out, whatever, Talk about new distilleries who are making gin and vodka first while things age in the barrel to make bourbon. I get it. But why from a 3 day, do they really believe there's no difference? Or because if it's only, you're talking about 60 hours difference,
right?
Why are we not putting out the best product we can? What's the reason for that?
Well, I think part of it is, it's 60 hours per batch. So you can multiply.
So it's a volume game.
Volume game.
Okay.
Also, one of the proponents for using the autoclave is the efficiency of.
It's a consistent kind of cook.
Yeah. You're wasting less water.
Okay.
Because the brick ovens are going to be a little porous, a little water is escaping, a little pressure is escaping. You can talk about. I don't think it really matters because it's being distilled, but you can talk about like the cleanliness aspect. You just have more control over the autoclave process. You're leaving less risk of anything, maybe not necessarily going wrong, but going different than what you want. So there's
consistency.
Yeah, consistency. Yeah, there's less guesswork going on, but I mean the bottom line for most of these companies is just money and just like
that drives most decisions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's just like quality versus quantity, which means money.
Volume game, I get it. I just thought it's hours,
right.
And I would think a reputation for a good product is going to help you push more product than. I guess not.
That's just one step. We like the next step is separating the fibers from the juice of the agave, and some people are still using traditional tajonas. So right now we're looking at a bottle of El Tesoro. The cork on top is this giant stone wheel, And that's what traditionally they use to press the piñas once they've been cooked.
That's a heavy cork for you, Rob.
Yeah, so that's attached. That's attached to a pole, and you have a burro that drags the tajona over the piñas and slowly crushes them to slowly release the juice.
After they're roasted.
After the slow roasting.
Yeah.
So that's another process.
So they're tender, and those juices the tendons have been broken down. Thinking about like a steak, it's been cooked a little bit, so the juices are going to flow a little bit.
Now they're slowly being pressed by this giant rod, slowly squeezing out the juices. That also takes a lot of time. Whereas a lot of companies now have like these shredder machines that shred all the fibers
and
of
then
the piña.
Press that just press.
And basically extracts the juice much quicker. And again, the people using these techniques will tell you that in the end process doesn't matter. But the people that have been doing it for centuries otherwise will disagree and say it's an important part of the process. But again, you're dealing with, for the small production ones, with a live animal, with burros, which again could be unsanitary. I think I was talking to...
and some of them will do a tajona, which is traditional, but also like attach it to like an old tractor, right?
Right.
It's like really slow.
Okay.
Or a forklift or something, something that can pull the tajona and still do the old method, but with machinery instead of live animals. PETA is not about using live animals, and on top of that, it could be a little unsanitary if the
Yeah.
And that's what I found really interesting about it is like navigating, because to be a tequila, you can shortcut the process, right? You can harvest young agave, you can cook it with autoclave, you can crush it with machinery, and it's still a tequila. It's like finding out which brands are doing it in a traditional method, because there's people that think that it does impact the quality of the product, that are letting it mature, letting the agave mature, slow roasting it, almost the way we would barbecue here in Texas, and then taking care and nurturing it when they are, getting the sugars out as well.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, I would be like a bulk producer, so I use my Traeger. So yeah. So I would be the one who's shredding it up.
You know what I call
Like
a
the
Traeger,
MGP.
right?
Yeah. There you go.
I always say any kind of pellet grill is the crock pot of the backyard. That's kind of what I call it.
But it's a convenient crock pot of the
crock pots are great.
and a consistent.
Yes.
I love a crock pot. I mean, they're a great tool to use in the kitchen, so might as well have one in the backyard.
Yeah.
Is it going to make the best food you've ever eaten in your life?
Probably not.
Probably not.
But when you're at work all day and you want to come home, it's a weekday kind of thing.
Yes. And then going back full circle, starting to talk about some of the brands that focus more on marketing, where it really kind of becomes a slap to the face is you'll see two bottles next to each other that are similar price point, and they're both expensive.
Yeah.
What most people would consider expensive. But one has been made the slow, traditional method, no cut corners, done everything slowly to the best of their abilities, and it costs the same as a celebrity endorsed tequila product.
Yeah.
And you see them next to each other, and you're unsure which one to grab. They're both a little pricey, and you end up going with the one that has the best marketing. Because as consumers, most people aren't willing to do the research. They want to just be quick. They want to be able to trust, and they trust the.
If George Clooney got his name on it, it's got to be good, right? Exactly. Or any other celebrity.
Or The
Rock. It's got to be good. But you keep saying traditional method, and the first thing that always comes through my mind when I hear that term, and I think it applies, makes me think about, and I thought you were going to mention it, Carter.
Champagne, yeah.
Because if I know somebody makes a sparkling wine in the traditional method, which to your point is the more time consuming to getting that second fermentation on the lees, and I always think it's going to be better right away. So to your point, saying that, it just makes me think, if I hear that, it's got to be better if it's made the traditional method.
And there's some big players that are making solid tequila with modern technology. So it's not to say that maybe in the future we won't be able to achieve similar results to the people that are doing. But like we were saying earlier, like with cooking a brisket, you can do a hot and fast brisket, but the low and slow is going to be more TLC, more love and care. In the end, generally a better product.
And I think to that point, still staying in the champagne comparison, when you're riddling the bottles, It used to be one guy would go in and
Hand
do this.
rotate them. Yeah.
Now they have this machine. You're still doing it in that method, but now you have this machine that just clamps onto all of them at one time, gives them that little quarter
Slowly
turn,
rotates them,
and it's
yeah.
done.
Or-
Instead of one guy taking 4 hours, it takes that machine 2 seconds, and then it comes back. And so I think to your point,
That's probably
there is
an
going to be some technology, but you're not losing the method.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They're focusing on efficiency.
Exactly. Well, let's that's kind of the nerdy part, the science part of, and there may be some other things that we need to touch on as we go through this, but let's jump into tequilas, and let's start off with a good friend of mine, and I want to know what you think about him, Jose Cuervo. He is a friend of mine. How do you feel about Jose?
So you got to have a lot of respect for, just historically, for Cuervo, for Sauza, and for Patron. Because without those three guys, I don't know that tequila would be where it is today. So Jose Cuervo, his family, they were the first ones to start producing tequila for sale. Without them, there would be no tequila production tradition in Mexico. There'd be, small master distillers in their own little towns, in their own pueblos, but there'd be no tequila being sold anywhere.
So they mass marketed tequila.
So they didn't necessarily mass. They were the first ones to open a
Tasting room?
distillery that sold outside of their region.
Okay.
Before tequila, you could go to the city of tequila, and there's a lot of people with their own tiny stills making their own tequila. They were the first ones to do mass-produced tequila. Sauza, the family, they were the first ones to export tequila outside of the United States.
Oh, okay.
And then Patron, like I mentioned earlier, they were the first ones to really put money into marketing, and they were able to make tequila not just, you mentioned earlier, most people think tequila is for shots and margaritas, but they were the first ones to make people rethink what tequila could be, and that it could be a luxury product, and that it could be something that has finesse and has a rich culture, and not just something to get you messed up.
It can be analyzed. When we think about a good spirit that we're drinking, I think when it's quality, you want to sit and really evaluate what's in the glass and enjoy what's in the glass and pick out the different characteristics and things you like about what's in the glass. And tequila can be that.
Yeah, I mean, tequila can be really special. I think, tequila, I think, is simpler than mezcal. But the tradition of being age-worthy has lended itself very well to being popular in the United States. Most bourbon lovers that transition into tequila do so because of the extrañejo.
Yeah.
And we touched a little bit on it earlier on the age categories. But the longer, most tequilas are being aged in ex-bourbon barrels. So you get, after a lot of age, a lot of those traditional sweet, caramel, vanilla, light spice notes. And those are flavor profiles that are very familiar to the American consumer. Believe it or not, out of all the tequila exported around the world, the United States drinks 90% of it.
Is that right?
Really?
Which is another thing about the ex-bourbon barrels from a marketing perspective, in addition to the celebrities. It's like you'll walk into a store and you'll see like a bottle, and it's on the bottle, it's marketing like aged in a King of Kentucky barrel. And so you'll have people that go in that are bourbon drinkers, and they're like, oh, this is aged in a bourbon barrel. What it all is, right?
So that's not like something new.
I'm that tater.
Yeah, same here.
I got that pappy back there. And
That's right.
So I do have a question, just kind of going back to the process of making tequila. So distillation, do you have column stills or do you have pot stills? Is there a combination of both?
Both.
Yeah, there's a combination of both. And like this one, I brought back an Ancestral for Mexico. This just started coming into the United States, and these are made in these like Filipino stills that are like really tiny, very unique. So
concentrated flavors more.
like just a little bit more funkiness. But yeah, tequila can be made in any still. There's no restrictions on what kind of stills they can use.
Okay.
Does the profile change quite a bit from still to still, where you can kind of tell, when we think about pot still or column still?
I mean, I've found that pot still is got more flavor and texture as compared to column. So if you think about like the production methods where you are slow roasting it, in an oven versus autoclave, your column still, you can get a lot more volume out of that, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Continuous.
Well, it's like we had the rum episode, and we talked about column stills versus pot stills, and that whole history there, whatever. And it seems like that with pot stills, you get a little bit more character to the spirit.
Yeah, one of the cool things though about, since I don't want to say it's a new category has been around, but just since it's new in popularity, a lot of the new tequilas being produced have the information on the label. So the one tequila I was mentioning earlier with Filipino stills, it tells you exactly the style of still that they use for the first distillation, for the second distillation. So there's a lot of transparency in the new tequilas being produced as far as what they're using. In fermentation, the types of tank that they're using, they could be using pine, they can be using other types of wood, they could be using stainless steel.
Pine? They would use pine?
Yeah.
That's got to be
extremely porous.
Well, yeah, but I'm just thinking.
Yeah, they use any wood available. So like I was talking to Sandra before the podcast and just talking about one of the things I love about mezcal, taking a quick deviation from tequila, is one of the things that people love about wine is the terroir aspect of it. Like you're tasting where it's from, that it kind of is a little snapshot in time of the region, of the climate, of the year. I think agave, even more so than wine, is like a time capsule. It's a perfect encapsulation of the flora and fauna from where that agave plant was found, the years, the elevation, the master distiller, not only his technique and his still, but he's not buying wood. He's whatever trees have fallen in his land, whatever he has accessible to him, he's using those to create the mezcal. So if he's got a ton of mesquite lying around, he's going to be using a ton of mesquite to bake the agaves. If he has a ton of oak around, he's going to be using oak to bake the piña. So
depending on where it's made, it could be like natural yeast as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's even more so than wine. It's like I said, a little snapshot, a perfect time capsule of the space and time and the people working to create that. And it's beautiful because it's so special and unique. It's also a little sad because if you fall in love with a bottle of wild agave mezcal, you'll never recreate that same flavor profile. You'll never find those same nuances again. It's hard to recreate a plant that lived for 30 years,
Kind of like wine when we think about wine. A vintage all the weather, the climate, and everything that year was perfect, and you never get that again. It's a very interesting thing to think about. Hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
I don't think most people think about that when they think about tequila.
Right.
They don't think about how it's made and everything that goes into putting into the bottle what's in the bottle. So,
and that's what angers a lot of people about the new celebrity endorsed tequilas. We talked about the price point. That's one thing that kind of sets people off. But a lot of people, it's hard to make tequila because the youngest mature plant is 5 years old. Yeah. So it takes time to make tequila. So when you rush the process, you're stripping the land of a lot of nutrients. You're corroding the earth, and a lot of the people that are making millions off of this are abusing the land and kind of setting up the people around them that are making it in those places up for a disappointing future, future where they're not going to be able to produce that, where they might, their land is being corroded. They can't grow other crops. They might not be able to grow agave there in the future. So they're going to lose out on a little bit of that. So there should be a little bit more care and love and attention put into conservation when we talk about tequila, because the agave takes so long to grow and it really does strip the land of a lot of important nutrients. So if you're not careful, you could decimate local ecosystems. And a lot of people are doing that for profit and not really reinvesting that money back into the
That's
land.
a great point.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. Because when you think about wine, we talk about wine a lot on this channel. Vines live for 60 years, and every season they produce fruit. So you continuously get an agave plant is one and done.
Yeah, I mean, you literally take away the whole plant. You harvest the whole plant.
So there's farmers that are continuously, when something is pulled up and used, they've got to replant.
Right. So one of the things that a lot of the new or more responsible producers are doing, they're trying to grow the agave in a more natural way, letting other plants grow in Mexico. We have like a little trinity of like beans and tomatoes and corn, and those three plants all grow together, and each one provides a different nutrient that the other needs to kind of self-replenish the soil. But when you're only growing one certain type, it's being all the nutrients of that it needs are being used up, and there's nothing to replenish it.
Yeah.
So they're trying to do it in a way that's a little bit more sustainable, in a way that that other flora and fauna can still kind of coexist and can maintain kind of the ecosystem to do it in a more healthy way for the land.
Yeah, like a crop rotation type thing,
Yeah.
like what what a lot of farmers do. I mean, if you think about like just a regular agricultural farmer, if they just strip the land, and they can't get fruit out of it or get whatever vegetable out of it, then they're done.
They're done,
Yeah.
right.
So anyway, it does make sense, and it's certainly more friendly to the earth.
Yeah.
But as the spirit category has blown, it's been very hard for them to keep up with demand. So a lot of people, we talked about cutting corners as far as the making of the product goes. They're cutting a lot of corners as far as taking care of the land goes. And it's just unsustainable right now. Like the way we're going, we're going to be running out of tequila here. And
So who do you put? Is it on the Mexican government to kind of pull that in, rein it in a little bit? Is it on the farmers themselves who are just chasing a buck?
So it's the brands themselves, because the farmers are kind of at the mercy of the brands that they're selling. Like, they're not making millions. Like the farmers themselves don't have a lot of money. It's the big distilleries that they're selling their product to that's making most of the profit. So that's one of the downsides of like our capitalistic system, that more is more, and if you're not making more money each quarter, you're not succeeding. So we're constantly striving for higher profit margins as opposed to creating something that's sustainable, that can last, that will. So it's on the government a little bit, but the government in Mexico has a lot of faults. There's corruption, just like in any government. Sure. There's oversights. There's people being paid off to kind of look one way. There's laws that are in place to protect certain things, and then once those laws are exceeded, then we reevaluate the laws instead of trying to change the people doing it.
Yeah, change the law, not
Yeah. So
okay, tell us what
tough.
you poured this first pour, because on the nose, I haven't tasted it yet. It looks like Matt finished his.
Yeah, I have.
It has
quite
a
good.
fantastic nose.
It does. Very vanilla.
So this is a El Tesoro Reposado pick. These are some of my favorite bottles. This one was picked by a group in DFW.
So we're doing barrel picks of tequila now.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I knew that.
So the
Nice.
Houston Bourbon Society has actually done 2 picks now, and I brought our first pick.
Yeah, I think this is the one that I did as well.
Yeah,
right?
we did
The
that
first
one together.
So one of the things El Tesoro, they do single barrels. Everything's traditional. They also put a lot into conserving the land. And one of the things that I think is really unique about this is that it's distilled to proof as well. And so we have 3 single barrels from El Tesoro, and they're distilled to proof, but there's variation since they're single barrels. Like one of them's 40.4%, one of them's 40.6%, and this third one we have is 40.2%. So little variations, but still pretty consistent for being distilled to proof.
Interesting.
So like any spirit, you go to the liquor store and there's just a wall of choices, right? How do you help educate somebody to make a good choice? Is it referencing back to the
Tequila Matchmaker? That's the first.
That's just use that.
Yeah, they actually just created an app recently, so you don't even have to go to the website. You can just pull up the app on your phone. But if you're a novice into the game, I would not buy a bottle of tequila before looking it up and just making sure it's at least made the way it's supposed to be made.
Yeah, because I've made that mistake in getting into spirits of just buying things that were, Carter's favorite saying.
Cool bottle.
Yeah, it looks cool.
Hey, by the way, there's a lot of cool bottles on this
There are
table
a lot
right
of cool
now.
bottles.
Yeah,
So that's the first thing I would look into. Just make sure that it's made. It doesn't have to be made the traditional way, but like making sure that there's There's no corners cut. There's no
Additives, coloring.
Yeah, so by law in Mexico, they're allowed to add, I think, up to 1 or 2% of flavorings and colorings, which you don't think would be a lot, but if you've ever baked anything with vanilla extract, 1 drop is a big...
Goes a long way.
Goes a long way.
Yep.
So imagine 1 drop of that into your tequila.
Well, you could also like super concentrate it as well, right? So that it still falls within the requirements by volume.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Here's a question I have. When I think about, rums, when we did our rum episode, they were telling us that every rum that comes out has been aged in, ex-bourbon or some kind of barrel, not necessarily ex-bourbon, but barrels, and has color on it. And then they have to filter it to get it back to a clear rum. Is that the same with when we look at this type of tequila, or is it aged in a barrel? This one's not aged in a barrel at all.
Well, so we mentioned the categories. For a Blanco, most of them are not aged at all, but they can have up to 3 months of aging and still be considered a Blanco.
But not in a barrel.
No, in a barrel.
In a barrel.
Sorry, it's not 3 years, 3 months.
Okay.
I don't know if I said months.
Yeah, you months.
Okay.
You said months.
Yeah,
but
so
I still thought that might give it some color.
So it will, but that's why I'm saying most of the Blancos, people that are drinking Blanco, they want to taste agave.
Okay.
They don't want any barrel
Influence there.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of times when people are putting it in barrels, I don't want to say they're trying to hide flaws, but you're taking away from the beauty that is the agave. So for most people's journey into tequila, especially Americans, they start off with the añejos or the extra añejos because it gives them the barrel sweetness, the characters that they're familiar with. Mm-hmm. And then slowly but surely you start weaning yourself off from that barrel influence, and you reach the blancos, which are just a more true interpretation of what the agave spirit is.
And the one we have in the glass right now is not a Blanco.
No, it's a reposado.
Okay.
So it's up to a year in ex-bourbon barrels. I think reposados are great. I think for me, they're like my favorite almost anytime. I can be in a mood for reposado anytime. You get some of those beautiful agave notes, but it's colored just a little bit and rounded off just a little bit with that slight sweetness of the barrel. You get just a kiss of the vanilla, maybe a little spice, and it helps accentuate and bring out the sweetness of the natural sweetness of agave. Mm-hmm. If you've ever eaten agave that's cooked, it's so sweet, it's like candy.
Really?
Yeah. So it kind of
I've
brings
heard
out
that.
a little bit of that flavor profile.
So do they do any aging in anything other than ex-bourbon barrels, like French oak or something like that?
It's like the one you have is Fortaleza Winter Blend. I believe if you look at the label, so that one's like American and French oak. So they do variations as well as the El Tesoro Paradiso, which I believe has some like cognac cask that they may use.
Yeah, so I think it's all aged in ex-cognac casks.
Yeah.
Oh, American and French oaks. Yeah.
So they're allowed to use any type of oak. It has to be used oak. I don't believe they can use new oak.
I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't think.
That would probably kill it. Yeah.
But they've also, Carlos Camarena is the master distiller at El Tesoro, and they've recently started doing some more experimental cask stuff. I know he's been playing around with some ex-sherry barrels. Oh, wow. And some of the ones that they've produced recently are aged in ex-Lefroy casks.
Mm-hmm. So that'd be more of a mezcal.
Yeah. It gives it this briny quality. I've tried 2 different barrels now. I think you maybe tried 3.
And those are añejos, so a little bit more aging.
A little sweeter. And they just the first one I had, I felt was like perfectly nuanced and balanced. It had just like the slight little briny smokiness to kind of round out the sweetness of the agave.
Okay.
The second release that I've had was a lot more Lefroy cask forward. Not that it wasn't enjoyable, but it was a little bit overwhelming of the tequila notes that I really love and enjoy. I think it was still a great product, and I think it's a very unique and experimental thing that I want to see more of, just see kind of how it develops. But yeah, they can use, I think, pretty much anything.
Man, this one that I'm drinking right now, it definitely almost has like that rum agricole kind of thing going on. Like it's a lot very earthy.
It's got a little bit more proof as well.
Yeah,
packs a little more punch.
I like that.
So let's go through what you have on the table, because these are obviously some tequilas that you guys really enjoy. So let's talk about, because if people see these in the store, maybe they'll remember, maybe they're going to write it down and make sure that they know about these brands. These are ones that you guys think highly of, that make a really good quality product.
Yeah.
Yeah, big respect. The only one that we're kind of missing here that I wish I had brought a bottle of is a Tapatio. That's one. That's my favorite Extrañejo right now. It's the Excelencia. But unfortunately, I finished mine and couldn't get another bottle before the recording of this. But starting off with the Blancos.
Such a lush.
We have Tequila Ocho as one of the Blancos. We have just like there's a regular standard version. And then Leo brought the Puntas. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the Puntas.
Yeah, so the Puntas, it's like a special release. We talked about earlier, it's kind of like the head. So it's one of the things that's really unique about it is the proof. So it's a 101 proof, 50.5%. And this one's really great. I mean, we talked about, potentially smoking some cigars later, and it'll hold up well to that.
So mentioning proof, just so people who don't know, typically tequila's in that lower proof. Think about it like a Scotch, 80 to 86, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. So when we see a 101, that's a high proof for a tequila. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Oh, for sure. And honestly, that's here in the United States. A lot of Mexican people will say that the tequila is better here because by law, the lowest thing you can produce or sell in the United States is 40%. I think they just changed it in Mexico. It's now 35.
Yeah, I think that's just as a spirit.
So they
in
can,
America,
any
right?
spirit, any spirit.
40%.
So they can water it down all the way to 35%. So you can be getting the same tequila here as in Mexico, but here you're getting that 5% extra ABV. So you're getting 5% higher concentration of flavor. But one of the things we love about the soda we were talking about earlier, it's actually distilled to proof. Like the single barrels are not watered down. It comes
Which
out,
is really cool.
It comes off the still at 80 point whatever. And then they put it in the barrel or not, or they just bottle it and then sell it at that.
So forgive my ignorance, but, we think about bourbon going into the barrel at a certain proof, no more than 125, whatever. And then it comes out and then they'll water it down. Does this, when it goes into the still, is there a typical kind of proof that's already on it and then it gets higher? Or is it just sugar? I mean, what's the process?
So when they distill it, you can distill it to basically whatever proof, depending on the method. Normally, column distilling is going to, I think, give you a little bit higher proof.
So depends on the producer, right? So if they're trying to get the most out of the product, they'll distill it higher, bring it down when they bottle it. If they're trying to go for the highest quality, then they may do something like El Tesoro and distill it to proof. And I think the other thing that you're talking about, like when you're comparing it to other spirits, is that you might put it in at 125, it comes out at 110, then you water it down to, say, 86 for a bourbon. You're going to have a lot less swings in proof because it spends a lot less time in the barrel. Right?
Yeah.
So a Reposado's in there for a year, a Añejo maybe 3, and so you're not going to see those big swings in proof because it just doesn't spend as much time in the barrel.
Okay. Yeah. So go through. Keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. That just kind of was curious to me how they make this.
We have the Blancos first. We have like I said, we have the Tequila Ochos. I also brought an Ancestral.
It's right in front of you.
Siembra Valles Tequila Ancestral. So the unique thing about this one is it's made in the Mezcal style. So the way they cook the agave is in one of those big pits with wood.
Now you're going to get me really excited talking about Mezcal, but I guess we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah, we'll touch on it a little bit.
Yeah, I think we should because there's Mezcal and what's the other one I hear a lot about now? Starts with an S.
The three made, so that's Sotol, but that's not agave.
Okay,
so
it's not.
The
different plant.
The three agave spirits in Mexico are Raicilla, Mezcal, and Tequila.
Okay.
And then Sotol is kind of like maybe like a second or third cousin, or maybe a cousin by my marriage. They're in the family, but they're not blood relatives.
It's kind of like me.
They're not
It's
invited
like
to all
by
the parties.
default.
Yeah. It's a different different species of plant, but can give you, I don't want to say similar flavor profile, but maybe comparable flavor profile. It can have a little bit of that vegetal. It tastes, you can, like in wine, you get the pierzine note, the peppery, like it tastes like jalapenos or something. You get a little bit of those notes. It can also have some citrusy notes that are similar to mezcal. But yeah, this just started reaching the United States, and I think it's a really, really cool experiment. I think it tastes amazing. It gives you the beauty of what agave can be. It touches a little bit on the smokiness of mezcal. And it's also higher proof for you proof heads out there. It's really fun. And then the reposados, we have Fortaleza. We have El Tesoro. We have a couple picks, and I think those are the only ones that we brought. But G8, G8 is also a really, really good brand.
Yeah, G8. They also do a overproof one as well, the 108, which is good for ranch waters, which Rob mentioned margaritas at the beginning, but the king of the cocktail for agave is the ranch water.
You know what? That's a good point. I didn't mention that, but that's become very popular. How long has a ranch water been around? I mean, I think of it in the last couple of years of just I became aware of it. I didn't even know it was a thing, and it may have been a thing in Mexico for a long time. I just didn't know about it. But is it something that's been around for a while?
I mean, in Mexico, honestly, the most famous tequila cocktail is the Paloma.
That's what I was thinking.
Even more so than the margarita.
Okay.
So
Really?
if people are drinking tequila, it's normally a Paloma.
Okay.
I don't know. We have a big culture of soda drinkers in Mexico.
Yep.
So
Mexican Coke's my favorite.
yeah, so like if people are drinking rum, they're drinking cubas, you know? If people are drinking tequila, they're drinking Paloma. So for those of you that know, Paloma is tequila and then grapefruit soda, maybe a splash of lime. Traditionally, in Mexico, it's going to be squirt. So it's just tequila, squirt, and maybe a splash of lime.
No Mountain Dew.
I don't even know what that is. Is that grapefruit?
That's for another episode.
In the Midwest, we call it Panther Piss. Well, it's a shot out at Dave Scott.
Yeah.
He thinks that's the greatest soda in the world.
Yeah.
Mountain Dew?
Yeah.
Very, very questionable. That's highly suspect.
Yeah.
I'm more of a mellow yellow fan
We,
myself.
we haven't talked to him in a while.
Yeah. My favorite breakfast pairing.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So squirt. Yeah, I haven't heard that.
Squirt. Yeah, esquirt. Tequila and esquirt. Yeah, everybody drinks Palomas.
Do you find more people in Mexico? Do they mix it like you're talking about? Is that how tequilas drink more over there, or is it drink neat where they really sit down and appreciate it after a meal out back or something?
Younger people and at parties, most of the time it's mixed.
Okay.
Like older people, like my grandpa who just passed away. Yeah, at it'd be like noon every single day, and he lives in a 3-story house. He like walked down the stairs. He'd be like, "Es hora de té," like it's time for tea, like we're British or something.
Yeah.
But he's always talking about tequila.
Okay,
¿Quieres
cool.
té? ¿Quieres té? Órale. They just serve you your little caballito de tequila every day, just like a little, like shot glass full that you would sip on. Where he lives up in the mountains is hot as hell, so his was normally in the freezer.
Oh.
So you go in the freezer, pull it out of the freezer, pours you your little pour of ice cold. It gets like so like syrupy thick. The mouth feels really enjoyable, nice and cool.
So you really got to sip on it a little bit.
And he just chills and sips on that for a little bit. But if we're having a party, similar to here, you take a couple shots of it, have it in a couple mixed drinks. Like I said, we're big soda drinkers over there, so most of the people will be drinking Palomas. I don't really drink soda, so if I'm going to do maybe a splash of squirt and the rest Topo or just Topo. And that's why I think the ranch water, another reason why it's become so popular, I feel like as people are becoming more health conscious,
Cut out the sugar.
they're
of the
realizing
soda.
that
It's like
the drinking's already not good for you, so to double up on high syrup, corn syrup,
Fructose corn syrup.
Yeah.
In the soda.
It's like
yeah.
maybe if we're already ruining our liver, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
Give
good
ourselves
point.
diabetes as well.
a couple teaspoons of ketchup.
Yeah, God. Oh, man.
Yeah, because you brought up a good point, Carter. I hadn't even thought about ranch water. So
And
whoever
it's
brought
super
it up.
refreshing as well, the ranch water.
I've never had one.
Yeah.
Oh, they're awesome. Yeah.
Never had a ranch water?
Nah.
Well, do you have Topo and lime?
I do have
Because
Topo
we have
and lime.
lots of tequila.
Yeah.
They're becoming more common on the golf course as
But
well.
that brings up a good question because we are talking about tequilas being mixed. What's your rule for, where's that law of diminishing returns that if you're mixing, you're going to lose, don't spend X amount of dollars or is there certain, what's the rule for
think it's
buying
just-
a mixer versus a sipper?
Relative for everybody, right? I mean, you'll see
No.
people. I'll say you'll see people in other categories like rum or bourbon will mix bottles that some other people
But they're
won't.
just being smart asses, aren't they?
Yeah, maybe.
For the most part.
But I would say like these El Tesoro single barrels, like when the first ones came out, the pick that Luis and I participated in, I think they were like $40-$50.
Yeah, they're like $50.
And so, like,
53.
Here's my question.
Like, I've
What
been
bottles on
hammering
here
Ranch Mars
are
with
you
these.
making a big batch of margaritas with?
I mean, I would probably go with Tapatio, right? Price point's a little bit lower, quality still high, and you can also get the 110 if you want to pack a little bit more punch. But what would you say, Luis?
Same thing, either that or maybe the GA Blanco, which is a little bit higher proof also. This Ocho, just the regular Blanco, is also really good. If somebody prefers a little bit sweeter, maybe a Reposado. But, I think a lot of it also depends on who I'm making the drinks for. I feel like everybody here would really appreciate, they talk about cocktails. The cocktail is only going to be as good as its base spirit. So the better the base spirit, the better the cocktail. So for people that are going to appreciate it, I wouldn't mind using even some of these store pick reposados to make a killer margarita with.
Yeah.
But your run of the mill friend that his only relationship with tequila was getting trashed in college doing shots of it, then you can find a tequila that's uses autoclave and uses the not the tajonas, and that they do the cheaper, easier method that's still producing a additive free, a coloring free tequila that's just going to be much cheaper than I would normally drink, and maybe a flavor profile that I don't love. That's still going to make a killer margarita, and they are going to think it's the best margarita in the world.
Yeah, because I agree with you. You still want the spirit to hold up. So I don't think you want to go cheap on it.
Yeah,
but there's that point of, I think, proof and kind of profile that still makes a quality drink that if I spend any more, I'm really not getting any more because I'm mixing versus, that middle kind of tier that I'm going to be
I'll
using.
make sure I don't make my George C. Stagg old fashioned for you.
Yeah, would you ever do that? Other than just being a smart ass?
I might.
Because
Or
a rare breed would
Sazerac
be just
with
really good.
Thomas H. Handy.
Yeah, it's Sazerac with Thomas H. Handy.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd really get a great experience there.
Yeah. Okay, your wife's saying something. What is she?
I like my old fashions with Blanton's Gold.
Oh, okay.
That's damn good, I would think.
Good old fashioned.
What are those, like 103 proof,
Where's
something
she?
like that?
Yeah, I think
gold?
right
Yeah.
around 100.
Yeah, they're right around 100.
A little over 100,
yeah. So I have a question. Of all the big
110?
like some of the big names that are out there, are any of those guys, you've got your Don Julio, you've got your Patron,
Trash.
yeah, you got your
Are they?
Cuervo. I mean,
Is it a
I would
marketing
say-
thing?
So Jose Cuervo does a Jose Cuervo Reserva de la Familia,
Yeah, the extra añejo.
which is their extra añejo that actually has a
really
different, I think it has a different nom than all of their other products. So that one actually is still made the traditional way. I think it's a solid product. I think when I was really into extra añejos, it's one that I would reach for a lot. In Mexico, you could get them for like $60. You get them for like $60 all day. And it was affordable, really, really, really tasty. And just a killer extra añejo for the value of how much it's aged. Most people here are in love with maybe like a Don Julio 1942.
Yeah, I got one.
Which is
Which is fine,
Additives,
but you taste it. It
sugar,
tastes like vanilla
coloring.
extract. It definitely has a little extra to it that's not coming from the barrel. It's
Yeah,
not coming
so
from the
that's
agave.
one of the things. Like, I'm really into agave spirits, mezcal, and the bottles of añejo. I maybe have like 2 bottles of añejo versus 30 bottles of reposado and unaged tequila and mezcal, because the longer it's in the barrel, the more it loses the essence of the spirit, in my opinion. And when you're looking at some of those brands, like he talked about, like extra añejo is where your person that's getting into tequila from rum, bourbon is going to go because of maybe just because of the color of the spirit, right? Because it's dark and that's what they're used to. But it's also going to be more in line with the taste profile that they're used to. But yeah, I would definitely not recommend that for people that are looking to, kind of taste what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
It's a marketing thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm going to tell you that I learned something today because I always thought the Blanco wasn't going to be as flavorful or as good as you get to the darker colored ones, but it's actually the reverse. If you really want to know what the tequila tastes like, take away the color that's adding that kind of artificial, that's, layering some things on the tequila versus what it is as it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
You have nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
Like with a Blanco, there's no, if the tequila wasn't made really well and it's not tasty, you're going to know right away. Whereas with anything with color, like I said, because they're legally allowed to add flavorings, you can hide and mask so much of the flaws of the agave itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say for the Hound Dog, the nose on this.
Oh, it's so
El
good.
Tesoro Paradiso is incredible.
Oh my gosh, it is so nice.
I've never been a big tequila guy, but the nose on the ones we've had is just amazing how good this is.
I do have a quick question. So I've seen some of this, and I don't know if this breaks rules or doesn't break rules or whatever, but I've seen like añejos that are clear.
Yeah, so that they go through a whole different process called cristalinos.
Yeah,
And
Claro.
I should have mentioned that's another different category of tequila. So these are tequilas that have been aged, that are añejo or extra añejo, that are then filtered and redistilled, so that it strips away all the color, but still gives you a little bit of the nuance of the aging process.
Okay.
I think they're a waste of money. It makes no sense to me. I don't know if this is true or not, but like logically following through why anybody would do that. They barreled these extra añejos. They tasted them. They weren't very good. So they're like, how do we fix them? Let's try to see if we can
Strip away some of
what we did. And they're like, oh, this isn't as bad as it was before. Let's sell it as this completely new spirit category. Also, there's a lot of misinformation. Some people have this weird thing about clear spirits versus not clear spirits. They're like, oh, I can't drink dark spirits because it makes me feel a certain way. Like, oh, I can't drink, clear spirits, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's more of a marketing thing. Like, oh, it's clear, it's clean, there's nothing to it.
That's what I was going to say. Is more of, even sometimes it's not stripping away, but it's just like marketing. Like, oh, it's añejo, but it's clear.
And to your point, we brought that up on the rum episode, and they said it was for mixing for cocktails, that a clear rum looks better in a cocktail for certain cocktails than a colored rum. So that's why they would filter
I could see
it
that.
for that reason. So
Yeah.
that makes kind of sense.
I can see it in a daiquiri. Obviously. I mean, if you're just lime juice, simple syrup, like a basic daiquiri and rum. I mean,
So I thought you were going to get to that point that they were they wanted that flavor kind of profile on the añejo, but wanted it clear for being able to make cocktails and things. But that wasn't.
I mean,
the reason.
I'm sure that has a little bit to do with it too. But most people that are making cocktails aren't using tequila that is aged for a very long time.
Okay.
Because then you could be making that spirit with like, I don't know, with bourbon or something. Because when it's aged for a long time, you get a lot of the barrel characteristics to it.
Yeah.
So you're losing a lot of the agave characteristics. So it's why even use the spirit agave in that instance, anyways.
yeah.
Okay.
But there are some exceptions, and that makes sense. But with the añejo, like it's been aged for so long and it costs so much money that again, most people aren't trying to use an extra añejo in a cocktail form.
Yeah.
Let's finish up the episode with, if there are some, a couple of cocktails that aren't a ranch water, a Paloma, or a margarita that can be made with tequilas that you guys really enjoy. Are there some?
I mean, you could
Am I
always
throwing
do,
a
you
wrench
could always
here?
do like riffs on classic cocktails, and experiment with that. Just using.
So I think sometimes in the spirit we get pigeonholed to what an old fashioned has to be bourbon, or rye, and things like that.
I see a lot of cocktails with the mezcal.
Yeah,
That's what I was about to
when you
say.
say like a riff. So like one of my favorite things to do is take like a really high proof rum and make an old fashioned.
Okay.
So you could also do the same thing with like tequila.
You can
Play
get
around
creative.
Play around with it, yeah.
Yeah, so more so than tequila, because I feel like tequila is very, like I said, can be very delicate. There are so many different classic cocktails I love with mezcal.
There's really no rules. I mean,
Right.
if there is a rule, rules are made to be broken. That's the way we're going to look at it. So if you want to experiment and try some things, but to your point, Luis, this is a delicate beverage. You don't want to kind of overpower it with some other things. It's really meant to be expressed the way it is. And, you know, we talk about a ranch water. There's not a lot going on there. It's a little water, it's a little lime, but the tequila's still a star.
Yeah, I think the citrus notes play really, really well with tequila. So a very famous tequila cocktail is El Diablo. I think it's a little creme de cassis, a little maybe ginger beer, a little citrus. So I think that's a really, really good cocktail. But mostly when I'm making cocktails, I reach more for mezcal. I think it holds up a lot better in cocktails. One of my favorites is Last Word, but made with mezcal, a mezcal last word.
Okay.
Mezcal
Yeah.
old-fashioned.
What is this you poured? Because that
This is,
nose is freaking.
This is
Mezcal.
so. I
This is
told you guys
wild
earlier. I
shit.
got excited when we talked about mezcal. So
Wow.
within mezcal,
You don't like that?
I'm not a big fan of that nose.
yeah, within mezcal, there's Pachuga, which is kind of like a special mezcal, and this one particularly is a traditional mezcal Pachuga that they do for Christmas, which Luis can probably talk about a little bit better than I can. But I really enjoy this. This is the second bottle I've had of this.
Wow, that is. I like that nose. You don't like that nose. You're making a face like
No,
this is not
it
pleasant.
smells like a rubber-soled shoe.
Yes. So it has that rum funk.
But I kind of like that.
Do you not enjoy that note?
I do, but this has like less of a sweet kind of funk like rum does. This has more of a earthy type of
Well,
funk.
I would also say like what we've been drinking to nosing that to nosing what you're nosing right now.
You go from
is a
sweet-
huge departure.
This is probably
it could-
what's happening.
It could be off. It could be off-putting just going from, nosing what we have been to this, which is super unique and off-profile compared to what you've been nosing.
and that's probably where I'm at right there.
this one. So this is another Pachuga that I brought.
Oh no, I like that.
So this is a Pachuga that's distilled with mango and habanero.
Oh, habanero.
Yeah.
Does
So
it have a little spice on it?
no, because it's distilled. So do you know how Pachugas are made? Mm-mm. So through the distillation process, Pachuga means breast. Traditionally, it's chicken breast. Sometimes they'll hang a whole chicken or just a chicken breast above while everything's cooking, and the
Juices
steam
come down.
comes up to the Pachuga. The
And the
fat
oils,
starts
too.
rendering
Yeah.
down, and it starts dripping into the bat.
Okay.
And then they distill it. So you're not getting any of those flavors like the capsaicin and everything. They're going to be stripped away through the distillation
Okay.
process. But it does leave a little bit of that character, a little bit of that nuance. Pachugas can be made from anything. Like he was talking about in Christmas time, the Pachuga can be made out of a lot of fruits. I've had some deer Pachuga,
Quail heart.
quail heart Pachuga. You can have
Wow.
That was
iguana
probably my
Pachuga.
favorite bottle that you've brought to me is a quail heart Pachuga.
Yeah, we have some sotol that's a snake Pachuga.
Oh wow, crazy.
So let's talk about those three. Let's touch on them because I think it'll be worth coming back to dive into mezcal. And you tell me, I feel like that's grown in popularity. Is it just become? It's not. It's been around for a while. I'm assuming.
Oh, it's been around for as long as tequila. So
But
Yeah.
in the last 10 years, it seems like it's exploded on
really
the consumer
exploded.
market.
yeah, and it sucks because when I got into mezcal maybe 8 to 10 years ago, nobody was drinking it. Nobody cared. Even in Mexico, like the only people drinking it were like if you're from Oaxaca, if you were drunk trying to drink something cheap, if you were like a bohemian kind of like hippie vagabond, like the upper high society kind of put their nose down at mezcal as this lesser spirit than tequila was.
Poor man's beverage.
Yeah, it was from the farmers. The
Yeah.
farmers
Well,
made
it's-
mezcal.
Yeah, from what I know of, it's like not only is it farmers, but they would also make it for like if the farmer's daughter was getting married, he would make a run of mezcal for the wedding, right? And so it was like the super unique, not only unique spirit because it's not blue Weber agave, and it's like small batch, single runs maybe, but it's also to celebrate special occasions.
So yeah, and even more beautiful than that, they make I'm blanking on the name, but they make these giant glass globes that when let's say when your son is born, you have the master distiller of your little town make a giant batch of mezcal, and they fill up this giant glass bulb, and then you bury it. And then the day he's about to get married, you dig it back up, and that's what everybody drinks.
Oh,
for
wow,
the
that's
celebration.
cool.
Yeah. And so there's in addition to that, they say that mezcal is a spirit that will age in glass
Like an eau de
versus
vie.
any other glasses, any other spirits.
Interesting.
Wait. What's in it that's continuing to allow it to age? I think about wine, and that's the first thing I think of. That it still has the.
Well, so it's like like an eau de vie, like Raquel.
Okay.
Raquel. There's a lot of brandies that do you know about Raquel? So these are brandies being made, I think, Austria. That they age them in glass globes and they hang them and they have them aging from anywhere from 10 to 15, 18 years. So chemically, I'm not.
Is it sugar and
I'm
yeast
not
that's
sure.
still in there? I'm thinking about.
So no, it's already been distilled.
it's done.
So, yeah, so it's like it's bottled aged, just how some wines are,
Yeah.
bottle conditioned, and some
Continuing
beers are
to-
bottle conditioned,
yeah.
and bottle aged. But there's no the yeast is done. It's been dead. The flavor concentrates over a long time, so you get this very powerful, beautiful essence.
I mean, similar to like you think about. Sorry to interrupt, but you talk about like dusty bottles, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you drink a bottle of Wild Turkey from the '80s, which may still have the same mash bill,
Yeah.
but although fermentation may be different, like we talked about pine, so they used to use wooden fermentation tanks at Wild Turkey versus steel now.
Yeah.
But it's that's the reason people pay for older whiskey as well. It's because it may not be like chemically, but you could tell a clear difference from the product.
But like wine, I'm thinking, certain wines, if it has high fruit, good acidity, and it's got good tannins, when it ages, you're going to get those tertiary notes. You're going to get notes that you don't have when you drink that young later on if you're patient and can wait. Is that kind of happen with this kind of spirit?
No.
Does it change?
I mean, they say it changes. That's why they age it. I think more than anything, it just rounds off and you get a slightly higher concentration of the flavor and nuance notes that you kind of want.
Okay.
Like, have you ever tried new make? Like of any spirit, like off
like
a still,
White Dog.
like White Dog, or
Yeah.
something like that.
I have.
So
yeah.
I feel like it has this, like you can tell it tastes good, but it has this sharpness to it.
Harsh.
It's just
Yeah.
like it's fresh made.
Just got to let it mellow.
And outside of just how high proof it is, it has this like, I don't know, sharpness
Like
is the only way I can
fresh off the still, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like that aspect of it mellows out over the years. And for eau de vies, the fruit that it's made out of can really kind of come to the forefront and shine.
Okay.
Like I said, chemically, I'm not sure what happens because it's already high proof. There's very like zero probably, or maybe 0.001% contact with oxygen. So it's not oxidizing. So I'm not really sure how it changes chemically, but I mean, they've been doing it for
That's interesting.
hundreds of years. So
Yeah.
it has some.
Who are you to question them?
Yeah.
Yeah. True.
The process works.
Yeah, just really interesting aspect of mezcal. And one of the things I love about mezcal is just how different it can be. With blue agave, with tequila, we're forced to use blue Weber agave. So it's only one type, but there's over 200 different species of agave in Mexico. So that's,
And all are used?
Yeah.
you can
Or is
use
it certain ones
no.
are used to make tequila
Well, that's
or
where
mezcal?
so only Blue Weber is for tequila.
for
And
mezcal,
that's where
you can
mezcal
use
comes in. Is just like opens
Catch-all.
up so many doors to different flavor
yeah.
profiles and like the uniqueness. So like you get an agave that this guy has to bring a donkey up a mountain, and spends could be weeks trying to harvest enough just to run one batch because it's wild grown as well.
Yeah.
It's not
Okay.
farmed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, that's interesting. So it's a little less restrictive, and so you can get a little bit more creative, maybe.
Absolutely. Definitely more creative. Definitely. And, there's a lot of very small production mezcal being made that the farmer is limited to the tools around him, but the things that limited him almost enhance the tequila or the mezcal that he's making. Like in his land, he might only grow Karwinskis and Rodacanthas. And then he might have, which are two different species of agave, and then he might have only access to pine. So his fermentation tank is made out of pine. And the wood that he's using to cook the agave is pine. And then so like every aspect of his process is going to be unique to his situation and him. So his whiskey's going to have so much character and so much uniqueness, which we mentioned earlier is beautiful because it's special and it's different. Mm-hmm. But it's also a little sad because you fall in love with a bottle that will never be recreated.
Yeah.
You'll never have that same one again.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can go back to the store and buy another one or get
Before
it from whoever you got
before
it
it
from.
goes away.
It's gone.
But for me, like I travel to Mexico once or twice a year, and I'll try to bring 15 bottles back, and most of the time, the next time I go, I can't get any of those same bottles that I bought.
Sure.
So if I fall in love with them, like I have to call a family member. It's like, hey, I need you to go by this.
Run down and save these for me. Yeah.
Because once they're gone, they're gone. You're never going to see it again.
So I want to ask, tequila, I think, obviously has made the trajectory of enjoying, appreciating good tequila has really been on this steady climb, I think, here in the States, specifically here in the Houston area. But I think as we travel, I still see people really enjoying and appreciating good tequila. Mezcal, I feel like it's on a boom. It's even on a
like
faster
skyrocketing.
trajectory.
Yeah.
I'd say
Do
the
you
same
guys
thing.
see that as well? Mm-hmm. Is that something that you think will be sustained for a period of time? Or is it about to level off?
It's impossible to sustain just because it's impossible to keep up with demand.
Okay.
Most of the mezcales that me and Leo love are wild agaves, and they're going to run out.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to replace a 35-year-old agave plant.
And that's the other thing I was going to say is they age so much longer than Blue Weber.
So that means your bunkers are getting filled.
I mean, nobody listens to this next part, but yeah, I'm buying up as much as I can now, and I'm trying to stash it away because the bottles that I was buying even 5 years ago in Mexico for $30 to $50 are now $80 to $100 in Mexico,
really?
and they're now $150 to $200 here in the United States.
Wow.
One of the things about, like, when you say bunkering is, like, you'll buy a bottle of bourbon and you'll put it in the bunker. With Mezcal, like, I'm opening that bottle immediately because there is so much variation between the agave that's used, the production methods, because it's, so unique is that in my case, when I get a bottle, it's likely something that I haven't tried, and I'm drinking it right away.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm seeing bottles in the United States sell now for upwards of $300,
Yeah.
and I would not be surprised if in the next coming years that's going to be almost an average price point for some of these rare wild agave.
Yeah, I would definitely get in now if you're interested.
Okay, you mentioned, and I know we're kind of getting off on Mezcal, and I think it might, do its own conversation at some point. But can you use the same app tool to find good bottles of Mezcal like you do tequila?
So a Tequila Matchmaker does have, I think, a little bit of agave to it, but I can't remember the website right now.
There's a different one then.
There's a different one.
We'll talk about that later.
It has like Mezcal reviews in it. There's so many Mezcal lovers in the world, and like especially in Mexico, we're so proud of it that a lot of people have put in a lot of the legwork to at least identify the different species of agave. One of the things that's really tough though is because we're so culturally different from region to region, the same species of agave is going to be called different things in different towns because of the indigenous people from those towns. Not only that, the agave can manifest itself in a different way depending on the altitude, depending on the soil type. So back in the day, a lot of it's just maybe like word of mouth. Like, you have the leader of that town that's been around forever. He was taught that this is this type of agave. You go 100 miles to a different town, it looks like a completely different species of agave. They call it something different. They believe it's a different species. now with modern technology, you go and do the DNA test and realize that it's the same exact agave.
Really?
It just manifested itself differently because of the soil type, because of the weather conditions, because of the elevation. So yeah, it's tough. I would say it's very tough to get into mezcal as a newbie because it's very hard to know where to start. I recommend finding an importer that you really, really trust.
I thought you were going to say friend. I thought you were going to say finding a friend who.
Well, no, I mean that's even better. But a lot of people don't have a friend that's an expert in agave, you know. Yeah. And if you want to get into it, it's kind of a crapshoot because, like I said, with over 200 different species, each species is going to have its own little unique quality to it. Each master distiller is going to give its own little spin.
Yeah, one of the things that is good that may be unique from other spirits is that there is so much difference. But if you go to like Specs in Midtown, they do have like 375s where you can buy a smaller bottle of mezcal.
Cool.
Oh, they're even starting to sell 200 mils.
So maybe you buy 5 200 ml bottles of mezcal, all different species, to hone in on one that you like before you spend $100+ on it.
That's a great suggestion.
And for those people that are listening outside of Houston, we have access to almost everything. Rey Campero, Real Minero, and Del Maguey are pretty. They're
solid.
They're some of the biggest exporters and producers of mezcal that can be found pretty much all over the United States. And there are 3 brands that you can trust to at least get a good idea of what the different mezcal types are. And if you're starting off new, I would start off with Espadín. Espadín is the cheapest. It's like the entry level mezcal.
And Cinco's pretty good too, right?
Cinco Sentidos.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're solid. I don't think they have as much distribution as the other ones mentioned though.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of their products that I feel like are really solid.
Okay, you mentioned that distribution. Is it all lower 48 states are getting in now? Mezcal? You find that, or is it really okay?
Everywhere
so it's
I've
distributed
traveled,
pretty well.
Yeah.
How about outside the states? Is mezcal like tequila? Is it distributed globally?
It's starting to be, but it's very, very hard. Like most, in the mixology scene, if you go to a famous bar anywhere else in the world, they'll have probably a mezcal cocktail just because
it's cool.
They know the magic.
Yeah.
It's
up and coming.
It's hip. It's different, and they got it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if you go to a pub in Ireland, there's not going to be a mezcal for you to try.
Maybe some
I get it. Probably not. Well, I mean, to your point with the limited production and all that kind of thing, I mean, guys, expanding out of the U.S. market's probably going to be pretty difficult. It's just,
especially when you guys are buying 90% of the tequila. Like, why sell anywhere else when where there's going to?
What do you mean, you guys? What do you mean, you guys?
What do you mean, you people?
Yeah, because shipping's a lot less coming here than it is to ship overseas somewhere. So,
right.
You can truck it here versus putting it on a boat and going somewhere else.
We just need folks to stop buying celebrity tequila. That would be a big
Okay, let's finish on that.
Tequila.
Let's finish on that because I do have a rule. I think Carter and I agree on this rule that anything with any kind of famous celebrity sports person on it, don't buy it. Don't get sucked into spending more than you need to on what's in that bottle because whatever the price is, a portion of that, probably a large portion, is going to whoever that is that put their name on that bottle. So I stay away from whether it's wine, bourbon, tequila.
No
gin,
19 crimes.
No 19 crimes. Snoop Dogg. Sorry, Snoop. He listens. Shout out, Snoop.
No Sweetens Cove.
No.
But I mean, you got to think like a company.
$250.
A company only has a certain amount of money that they can put into their product. How much of they are putting towards celebrity endorsing is money that they're not putting into quality. So
it's a way to sell a product that's crap.
Or even if it's quality, it's just higher price, and you can get the same quality for lower.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's just a pro tip that pull up the say it one more time, the Tequila Matchmaker.
Tequila Matchmaker.
Pull up Tequila Matchmaker and find a bottle on there versus somebody who put their name on that bottle.
Yeah, one thing I love about it is they have like their own reviews and they also have community reviews of people.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that has 2 scores. Sometimes it's funny to see what the average person thinks of a tequila versus what they think of a tequila. Like it'd be very skewed. The average person's like, "Oh, this tequila's amazing." They're like, "Whoa, hold pump the brakes. But a lot of times it'll be pretty similar. The community and the professionals review it. Very
It's like
similar.
Rotten Tomatoes. You got the audience review, and then you got the.
I was thinking
Always go audience.
Yeah.
Always go audience.
I was thinking Vendino and Wine Searcher. Yeah. Well, that was a fun episode, guys. Thanks for coming on and educating me on tequila and let me have a couple pours that are really, really fantastic. Much better than I was a little nervous coming in, going, man, I'm going to try these, but I know I'm not going to like them. And I absolutely love them. And my wife's smiling, so I know she's enjoyed what she's had in her glass.
I was going to say, tequila makes your clothes fall off, so I'm glad you guys are still here since I'm naked.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't stood up in a while, so.
No, well, we're glad we could maybe change your opinion a little bit on agave spirits.
Not maybe, you did. I'm looking forward to trying some other things because
Absolutely.
We got to do Mezcal, Raicilla, and Sotol next.
I'm down for
Can
that.
you bring your cocktail game?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, that'd be
I'd like to do
we
that.
can start with ranch water when this episode's over.
Well, okay.
I've
yeah.
got some limes. I've got some Topo Chico.
Yeah.
I
Do
think
we have
we're in
any tequila?
business.
Do we have any tequila?
Nowhere.
I think we drank it all.
No, I appreciate it, guys. Had a lot of fun talking about this. Hopefully the listeners enjoyed the conversation, learned a little something about tequila that they didn't know, and go out and definitely buy a good bottle. Yep. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour
Of tequila.
of tequila. Maybe a ranch water.
Hell yeah.